It is early morning on the northern shore of the Sea of Galilee. The water is still. Two brothers are waist-deep, dragging a net through cold water, doing what their father did and what his father did before him. They are not waiting for destiny. They are not praying for a calling. They are fishing. And then a man walks up to the edge of the water and says 4 words that change everything. "Follow me," he says. And they do.
That moment is where the whole thing begins. Not in a temple, not with a scroll, not with a committee of religious experts. Jesus starts with fishermen. Most people who grew up in church can name maybe 3 or 4 of the 12 disciples. Peter, obviously. Judas, because of what he did. Maybe John. Maybe Thomas because of the doubt. But the full list is stranger and more deliberate than most people realize. Because when you look at who Jesus actually chose, the backgrounds he drew from, the personalities he put in the same room, a picture emerges that is nothing like what Sunday school taught you. We are going to walk through all 12. Who they were, why Jesus chose them, and why each one still matters.
Let us start with the brothers. Simon Peter and Andrew were commercial fishermen working on the Sea of Galilee, which means they were not poor subsistence fishermen casting a single line from a rock. They owned equipment. They had a business. Peter especially was the kind of man who filled a room, loud, impulsive, always the first to speak and sometimes the first to get it wrong. Jesus looks at this man and gives him a new name. You are Peter, which means rock. Not because he already was one. Because of what he would become. Peter would preach the first sermon of the Christian church in Acts chapter 2 and 3,000 people would be baptized in a single day. Andrew is Peter's quieter brother. He is the one who first heard John the Baptist point to Jesus and said that is him, and then went and got Peter. Andrew does not get many stories. But every time he appears in the Gospels he is bringing someone to Jesus. A boy with 5 loaves and 2 fish. A group of Greeks who want to see Jesus. Andrew is the connector. The one who works behind the scenes. His legacy is the people he introduced.
James and John were also fishermen and also brothers, the sons of a man named Zebedee. Mark's Gospel tells us Jesus called them Boanerges, sons of thunder. That is not a compliment for gentleness. These two once asked Jesus if they could call down fire from heaven on a Samaritan village that had refused to let them pass. Jesus turned and rebuked them. John would later become the apostle of love, writing more about love in his letters than almost any other New Testament author. That transformation from sons of thunder to the disciple of love is one of the most remarkable character arcs in the Bible.
Philip was from the same town as Peter and Andrew, a place called Bethsaida. When Jesus calls him, Philip immediately goes to find his friend Nathanael and says, "We have found the one Moses wrote about." Philip is the recruiter, the one who wants everyone else to see what he has seen. But Philip also struggles with comprehension. At the Last Supper when Jesus says, "Anyone who has seen me has seen the Father," it is Philip who raises his hand and asks, "Lord, show us the Father and that will be enough." He has been with Jesus for 3 years and still cannot quite connect the dots. Jesus does not dismiss him. He answers him. Nathanael, also called Bartholomew, is the skeptic. When Philip tells him about Jesus of Nazareth, Nathanael's first response is blunt. Can anything good come out of Nazareth? But when Jesus sees him coming and says, "Here is a true Israelite in whom there is no deceit," Nathanael is undone. "How do you know me?" he asks. Jesus says, "I saw you under the fig tree before Philip called you." That is enough. Nathanael goes from skeptic to confessor in a single conversation.
Matthew is the one that should not be there. He is a tax collector, which in first-century Judea meant he was a collaborator with Rome, collecting money from his own people on behalf of the empire and keeping a cut for himself. Tax collectors were despised. They were socially cut off from the synagogue. And Jesus walks past his tax booth and says, "Follow me." Matthew gets up and leaves everything. Then he throws a party and invites all his tax collector friends to meet Jesus. The religious leaders are offended. Jesus says it is the sick who need a doctor, not the healthy.
Thomas gets reduced to one moment, and it is not fair to him. He is called Doubting Thomas because after the resurrection, when the other disciples tell him they have seen the risen Jesus, Thomas says, "Unless I see the nail marks and put my hand in his side, I will not believe." But Thomas is also the one who, when Jesus said he was going back to Judea where people had just tried to stone him, said, "Let us also go that we may die with him." Thomas was not a coward. He was a man who needed to see clearly. When Jesus appears and invites Thomas to touch his wounds, Thomas does not reach out his hand. He simply says, "My Lord and my God." The highest confession of any disciple in the Gospels.
James the son of Alphaeus and Thaddeus, also called Judas son of James, are the quiet ones. History records almost nothing about them beyond their names on the list. But their presence on that list is itself the point. Jesus chose 12, not because all 12 would be famous. He chose 12 because the mission was bigger than any one personality.
Simon the Zealot is fascinating. The Zealots were a Jewish political movement committed to the violent overthrow of Roman occupation. They believed God's kingdom would come through revolution. Jesus puts this man in the same group as Matthew, a Roman tax collector. A man who hated Rome beside a man who worked for Rome. That is not an accident. That is a statement about what the kingdom of God does to political enemies.
And then there is Judas Iscariot, treasurer of the group. The one who carried the money bag. The one who for 30 pieces of silver handed Jesus over to the people who would kill him. The one whose name has meant betrayer in every language ever since. Judas is the unanswerable question. Jesus knew. The Gospel of John makes that clear. And yet he chose him. He washed his feet at the Last Supper. He called him friend in the garden. Whatever that means theologically, it means Jesus does not write people off before they write themselves off.
Here is what the full list reveals. No priests. No scribes. No graduates of the Jerusalem rabbinical schools. Fishermen, a tax collector, a political revolutionary, a skeptic, a doubter, and a betrayer. Jesus did not build his movement with the most qualified. He built it with the most available, the ones who said yes when he said, "Follow me."
And that is the point that lands differently when you see all 12 together. You are not disqualified by your background. You are not disqualified by your doubt. You are not disqualified by your politics or your failures or the fact that nobody in your town would have picked you. He chose them knowing exactly who they were. He chooses the same way still.